Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel will be David Riggs with his talk titled, Why You Should Hate Wabash at Least Once. David is a Wabash College graduate with a degree in financial economics and a minor in rhetoric. Within months of graduating, he founded Numa, a digital marketing agency he built and sold in 2025. He now runs Carteria, a private equity firm focused on turnarounds, acquiring struggling companies and working alongside their teams to bring them back to making a large impact. At 28, David manages a portfolio of 9 companies with 3 successful exits to date. He lives in Denver with his wife, Kristen, and their 2 dogs. Let's give a warm welcome to David.
Good morning, Wabash. All right, I'm not great with a fixed mic, so you'll have to forgive me. But to say I'm excited to be back on campus is an understatement. I came to campus nearly a decade ago, which I was reminded of not too long ago. It makes me feel old. You guys will be there at some point. But flew in Tuesday evening, had a chance to catch up with some students, some faculty, did some stuff with the CIB as well. And it feels a little eerie to be back on campus. You all, the students, have things to do. You have classes to get to and things like that. I don't, but even walking down campus, I was like, do I have a paper due? It caught me off guard, to be honest. But jokes aside, before I begin, I need cameras up there. Zach Gillot, thank you for the invite. I know you were, there it is. We are in rainy and somewhat cold Crawfordsville. You are in Granada, which I'm sure is much nicer. So again, thank you for the invite. When you watch the recording back, hopefully you're smiling. But I want to give a quick thank you to everybody on campus as well. 10 years ago, I came here. 6 years ago, I graduated. A lot has happened since then. I don't think I'd be standing here in front of you without your help and support. So thank you. Let's get into it. A few people have approached me saying they're excited for the talk today. The title is a little on the nose, purposefully. But I got 2 questions for y'all. First, who here loves Wabash? Show of hands. Nice, energetic. Okay, the more important, maybe difficult question, who here hates Wabash? We got a couple. I didn't know if we get a couple. We get some honesty. Look, I figured I wouldn't get many hands. I got a few, especially during Wabash United Week. Sophomore year, if you would have asked me that question, I probably wouldn't have raised my hand either. I certainly felt it, though. I was fairly beat up with an injury from soccer. I was sidelined for, I can't tell you how many months. The only thing I could do was walk back and forth to class, which isn't all that exciting. And it kept me off the season for most of the field and in pain for most of the moments that I wasn't on the soccer field. Something that my identity was in suddenly kind of disappeared. So I'm a sophomore on campus in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Not the easiest place to go to college. Suddenly I didn't have the thing that I enjoyed, soccer. Classes weren't all that much easier either. I couldn't really find a rhythm. I was struggling in classes. The things that used to be easy were suddenly difficult, and the things that were difficult were far more difficult than I thought they were. And broadly speaking, I was struggling to achieve much of anything. College was hard. Sports were hard. I couldn't find my own path. And honestly, I felt like I was being pushed around by college, by life, and admittedly by Wabash. I thought I was being bullied by the school, which in some ways maybe I was. So one night, long phone call with my dad. I think we went back and forth, and I think he finally gave in. And I decided I was done with Wabash. I was going to wake up, and I was going to fill out an application to transfer to Purdue, not too far away. I'm sure some of you have been. I decided to sit on it, though. And even in that moment, I wasn't sure why, but I knew that there was a reason that I should sit. I should figure out if this is ultimately the right decision. And I ended up sleeping on it that night. I woke up the next morning and realized something. I wasn't really running to an opportunity. I was running away from what Wabash had to offer and running towards something that I thought would have been a lot easier than what Wabash was. I was running from the exact place that I think God truly put me in. So we'll play an imaginary game. Let's imagine I transferred to Purdue, or any school for that matter. I'm a Kentucky basketball fan, so maybe I go to Lexington. I would have likely finished out my 4 years there, not challenged. I would have had much lower cortisol levels, but I don't think I would. Nice, you all know what cortisol is. I don't think I would have ended up in the same spot I was today. I certainly wouldn't have been speaking here, but while the bio made me sound really cool, I don't think that bio would have existed either. College would have been easier. life would have been harder. And that's a theme that I'll come back to quite a few times. So what made me stay? It's because I knew, even if I couldn't articulate it, that Wabash would turn me into the type of man that I think the world needs more of, a gentleman. Here's the thing nobody told me before I got here. There are no girls here. Jokes aside, Wabash only works if you hate it, at least once. That's the deal. That's apparently what you all have signed up for when you all sat in this chapel during ringing in ceremony. There's a little subscript somewhere in the speech that someone gives that you are going to dislike this place quite a bit. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. So I didn't come here today to talk about self-improvement in some abstract way. You can read some books on that if you'd like. I came to talk about Wabash, about why this place should deeply challenge you, about why you need to put in what you want to get out, and about it why at some point you're going to understand this point again. You should hate Wabash. It should challenge you. It should feel uncomfortable. Because if you hate it, or if you don't hate it, excuse me, you're not doing this right. So let's talk about why this matters. I've been in the quote-unquote real world since 2020, and my hot take, if you will, is that economically, socially, relationally, most men are checking out. And I think the world gives you two mirrors to look into when you check out. The first says you're toxic, and yes, I'm using that word purposely. Your ambition is dangerous, your competitiveness is unhealthy. You should probably just take a step back. And after starting my company, time and time again, I was told by people a few years ahead of me, a few decades ahead of me, or people even that were my peers to quote unquote pull back the reins. Take a step back and figure out what's realistic. The funny part is, I still get told that today, and I think I'll probably get told that into the future as well, as you all will whenever you end up graduating. And I get why this story exists. There are plenty of men that have big ambitions that haven't done great things. It's understandable, so it's not their fault that they see their life or the world through that lens. But the response to poor behavior from men shouldn't be to avoid ambition at all costs. And I hopefully don't want you to hear that story today. Once you hear that message long enough, you start to believe it. You start to take a step back. You start to think a little bit smaller, and you stop raising your hand at new opportunities. The second is that you're the victim. The deck is stacked against you, and there's nothing that you can do. I had a class here. I'm sure some of you have taken macroeconomics with Dr. Mikek. He has you read the news, I would assume, still, and check out what's in the news. And sadly, if you read the news, it seems like the whole world is stacked against everybody right now. We're not going to get into that today. But I think the second story that many of you will hear or have heard already is that the world's hard. It's sneaky because it feels like honesty. The world is hard. College is hard. The things that you do are hard. That's normal. And that's kind of the whole point of my talk today, is that Wabash is challenging. A lot of men hear this once and decide that the effort isn't worth it. Why would you waste your time building something if the world's just going to tear you down and tear it down? It'd be a lot easier just to kind of fall in line and do whatever. Both stories are poisonous. One strips you of permission to go do something great. One strips you of agency. But Wabash offers a third story. It says you're necessary, says you're impactful, and most importantly, it just doesn't see you as another guy, another man, another student. It sees you as a gentleman. A challenge is something that you can work towards during your 4 years here. And this doesn't happen by accident. Wabash has been around since when? There we go. Yeah, that's not by accident. We're going on 200 years. It happens because this is what Wabash is designed for. Build you down, or break you down, and build you back up. To put you in rooms where you're probably the dumbest person. I had plenty of those when I was here. To hand you responsibility before you're ready, and to trust you with a gentleman's rule that most institutions would never trust you with. There was a time, I think sophomore year, none of you know Dean Raiders, but I got into a little trouble. Dean Raiders called me into his office, and I knew it wouldn't be good. But I was expecting Dean Raiders to reach under his desk and pull out this big book of rules and say, okay, you broke this one. This is what we do about it. And he looked at me. He said, you know what you did wrong? And I said, well, kinda, and he explained it. He said, well, what do you want to do about it? I was like, that's weird. Shouldn't he be telling me what I need to be doing about it? And I always think back to that story. Most colleges aren't going to trust you with that. They're going to throw a rule book at you and hope that you follow it. Wabash is giving you a challenge to think critically, to spend your 4 years here really working that side of your brain so that when you leave and go do something special after this, that's something that most others aren't going to have. So Wabash should be the hardest thing you've ever done. Take it from me. 6 months after I graduated, I decided to take a startup seriously, a company called Numa. About 4.5, nearly 5 years later, I sold that for a life-changing amount. I share that not to brag, but I share that to focus on the most important part of that story. Those 4.5, nearly 5 years that I spent building Numa were far more difficult than the 4 years of what you're going through today in college, taking classes, going to and fro. And truthfully, the work I'm doing now seems easier than what I actually did during these 4 years here as well. It's not because the work is simple. It's not. And I definitely don't think I chose something easy to do. But I allowed Wabash to beat me up every single day and chisel away the parts that weren't working for the broader goals of what I wanted to do. And that's the trade. That's a little subscript that you sign on whenever you come here for Wabash and you sit here in chapel for the ringing in ceremony. You let Wabash beat you up, or the world beats you up later when the stakes are far higher, the safety net's gone, and you have a far larger price to pay for the mess that you've inevitably found yourself in. If you're coasting through Wabash, you're wasting it. If your classes aren't exposing gaps in what you know, you're not pushing hard enough. If you're not in rooms where you feel completely out of your depth, you're probably playing it too safe. As the talk of my title alludes to, you should have moments where you hate Wabash. Not in some performative, complaining to your friends way where you text them and you're like, oh, I hate Wabash. Everybody does that. You should have real moments where you can't stand the place, where the workload feels impossible, where a professor inevitably tears apart something that you thought was a guaranteed A, where you fail at something you cared about, where you consider leaving. That's the whole point of Wabash. On the other side of achieving my biggest goal in life, I spent a lot of time thinking about Wabash, as I think one would. And the conclusion I came to is this: the gentleman's rule isn't a perk, it's a test. Every single day you're being asked, can you govern yourself when no one's watching? Can you make the hard choice whenever no one is watching? Excuse me, I read that twice. Can you make the hard choice when the easy one is right there? Most people put in the minimum. They do enough to pass. They show up but don't engage. And then when they graduate, they get a nice little degree, they hang it in something pretty, and they put it right on the wall and hope that the six-figure salary in the corner office is somewhere in the diploma as well, that you pull out and you're like, I found it. It doesn't work like that. Wabash doesn't change you, you change you. Wabash just gives you the tools, the permission, and most importantly, quite a bit of pressure to figure that out. So let's get to the fun stuff. If I were in your shoes again, here are the 4 things that I would do, or I wish I could go back and do, to make sure I got the most out of my time here, to soak up every little bit that Wabash has to offer. First, I'd find something terrifying to chase. Not a safe goal, not something I knew I would hit, something that actually scared me. At Wabash, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was a financial economics major, but you could have thrown a different career at me every day of the week, and I probably would have gone after it. But I said yes to things that made me uncomfortable. Throughout my 4 years here, I played soccer. I was involved in TEDx, CIBE, Sons of Wabash, and a handful of other initiatives on campus. I ran for positions I wasn't qualified for. I started projects that ultimately failed, as many of them did. But that's where I learned what I was capable of, what I was interested in. Not in the success, but in the reps. You have 4 years of permission here to try things and fail. The failure that you have at Wabash is more or less costless. If you start a club and it fails, nothing really happens. If you do something at the CIB and it doesn't work out as planned, nothing really happens. Cassie might get mad at you, but nothing really happens. When I graduated Wabash, I set a goal to retire by 30. And yes, you are allowed to laugh. I really had no business setting such a goal. I was 22 years old. I had minimally no skill set available to the market. I was living in a new city in Chicago. And it was during the peak of COVID. So if you listen to one of those 2 stories, the cards were stacked against me. I had no business trying to set such a goal. But when you put a really big mountain in front of you and you're asked to climb it, it only leaves you one option: to climb. So over the next 4.5 years, I climbed as fast as I could and built a business. I chased the goal, packaged it up, and sold it. Wabash gives you all the tools to climb big mountains. You just have to figure out what you want to climb. Second, I'd become economically dangerous. Not rich. Rich is not the goal. Dangerous is the goal. At Wabash, I don't think we really use the term economically dangerous, so some of you are looking at me a little confused, which I figured. But here's what the term means to me. The things that mattered most about my 4 years here were not the true academics that I took. Professors, if you're in the room, don't look at me. What mattered were the things and the skills that I developed to use outside of the classroom. Learning to write, learning to speak and stand in front of you all, learning to walk in front of a room with people far smarter than me and figure out who I want to talk to and why. Learning how to beg for an extension that I probably didn't deserve. Those skills compounded. They're why I started a company and why I'm here today. And as you think about becoming economically dangerous, my challenge to each of you is find a skill that's hard to replace. Wabash gives you the foundation, but you have to build on it. Develop a skill, master it, and take it to the market and do something with it. Third, I'd build physical strength. I think this one's simple, and honestly, it wasn't in my speech until I thought on it and said, this is the right thing to put in here as well. And I wish I would have taken it more serious while I was here. Yes, I played soccer, but that's not all of it. When I was building Numa, the days that I trained and were in the gym were the days that I thought the clearest, the days that I were far more productive with what I was trying to do. The discipline of showing up to the gym and doing a hard thing is far less about the maxes that you're trying to chase. It's about the discipline of showing up to something, making it difficult, and chasing it down. It's like a test for every other part of the life. What you do with that 1 hour drives what you do in the other 23. So my challenge is to get in the gym. Not because someone told you to, certainly not because of the motive that I told you to, but because you're willing to chase down something a little bit more difficult, a little bit uncomfortable, and make yourself better in the process. Fourth and last but not least, this one is something that you all are already granted. I'd find a pack. The friends I made at Wabash are still my closest friends. The guys I call when things go wrong, the guys I call when things go right, the guys that were there when I sold the company. And I truly think the guys that will be there for me, whatever comes next. But there's a stage in sophomore year where I almost missed that. I almost isolated, I almost treated Wabash like a transaction. I come here, I apply, I get my ringing in ceremony, I spend 4 years taking classes, I get my diploma, and I'm out. Again, I hang it on the wall and hope that I get a nice job. You're sitting in a place specifically designed to build brotherhood. This is what Wabash is built for. Don't waste it scrolling in your room, watching TV or YouTube. Find men ahead of you who've climbed mountains you want to climb and ask them how to climb the same one. So, in closing, I want to leave you all with this. Wabash just doesn't give you a sandbox, or an education, it gives you a sandbox. A place to build, a place to tear down, and then build yourself up again. A place where failure is more or less costless, but it's encouraged, which is the key point. Maybe you are filling out the application right now. Maybe you are coming to my talk today because you saw the title. You're like, man, he hated Wabash. What did he do about it? Maybe so. My challenge is to ask yourself why. What are you running from, and what do you think you're running towards? Some of you will look back on your time here and will be standing in a position you're proud of, grateful for every challenge, every high, and every low, because you built something with it. Others will look back and wish they'd done more with the time they had. There are no differences between those two people, except one took everything that Wabash had to offer. Thank you.
A few final announcements. On Friday, track and field has a meet at Illinois Wesleyan. Volleyball has a game at Olivet. On Saturday, baseball has 2 games in Virginia against Franklin and Marshall College in Hampton-Sydney. Basketball has a game at Oberlin. Tennis will have a home match against Franklin. Lacrosse will have a home game against Hope. And finally, wear your Wabash United shirts and bring your rally towels to the tennis match and the lacrosse game to finish off Wabash United Week strong. Now, would you please rise and join me in singing Old Wabash? Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. From the hills of Maine to the western plain, or where the cotton is blowing, from the gloomy shade of the northern pine to the light of the subseas, there's a name